county appointee, and now I'm the mayor of Missoula. So, you know, you can do whatever you want. You can be wherever you want to be. I just want to thank you for the service that you're providing our community. There is a lot of engagement and opportunity at this level where folks like yourselves are giving of your time and expertise, not only to help guide community boards and commissions, but also to learn from them. I mean, interestingly, I always found myself to be a bit of an advocate in that space and an ambassador because I knew things that the general public didn't. And there's a lot of assumptions that the general public makes when we don't have the information, right? When we think something might happen a certain way, but when you're operating in the space, you can help actually people understand local government, which I have to say, thank you. It's a big beast. This is also a great opportunity just to better not only understand how to run public meetings, how to be effective in those public meetings. It's really helpful to understand what our decision-making space is. You know, I think a lot of us get involved in commissions or boards with the assumption that we may be able to do certain things with that. And in reality, there is a defined space that we're operating in, especially for these public boards and commissions. But the level of training that Dan will provide is excellent, and ongoing support is really fantastic. We depend on you to do the great governance that we do here in the city and at the county. And so thank you for the effort that you're providing. And I will just say that my tenure leading up to being mayor, I served on a number of different boards over the years, and it really helped me understand better the way our community functions. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to bring your expertise to it, and then also to take what you're learning from this experience and continue to build out our community. So thanks to all those that are online as well, and I'll hand this over to Dan. Thank you. Everybody.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor. Is this working? Okay. Well, thank you for being here. Appreciate the invitation. And we are here twice a year in Missoula County and the city. One's hosted in the fall by, I don't know, the city or the county, and the other one in the spring. Are we in the spring? This is spring, right? Hard. Today it's spring. So we're glad that you're here. And is this one that's hosted by this? Well, no, I guess they've just said we're going to embrace it and do it. Okay. My suspicion is all of this, that the folks here in the room are both, some of you are serving on a county board, some of you are serving on a city board. Okay. Just for my edification, what boards are represented in the room, or boards? Maybe some of you might be serving on multiple boards, but okay, great. Oh, the foundation, okay. Oh, lovely. Like you got nothing to do the last couple years, right? Oh, great, yeah. You look very familiar. You work for the Forest Service, right? I know. I forgot what I said last time. So each time, if you've been to one of these before, it's all new. If you've been to one of these trainings, you've been to one of these trainings. So good to see you. Well, who else is here in the room? Development Authority, great. That season's coming up, makes me itch just thinking about it. Great. Parker, good to have you here. Yeah.
The affordable
housing. Okay, great. Ooh, have they been? Oh, food policy. Oh, I love coming to Missoula. You've got such creative boards and councils. I think it's great. Food policy council. That's just in Missoula. We don't see that anywhere else. So that's great to see that. Okay. Sewer and water. Yeah. Okay. You're elected to the sewer board. Yeah. Okay. Good. Great. Okay. Good. New fire district. Sea Lake Fire District. Okay. So it's quite the mix, and that's great to see the mix and the variety of boards Now, some of you may be serving on a public board, and some of you may be serving on a what we would call a private board, or a nonprofit board, or an association. And I just want to make the distinction between the two. The content I'm going to cover tonight is going to be primarily for those that are serving on public boards, which means you were either appointed by a public official, someone that was elected, or you were elected yourself, like the Water Sewer Board, or the Fire District Board, Conservation District Board. Those are people that are elected by the people in that district. Or you were appointed by a county commissioner or a city council to serve on a board doing a public purpose or public function. So that's primarily what I'm going to be working in that space tonight. For those that are serving on private boards or associations or are adjacent to those public boards, you will have, you don't have the same level of statutory or legal expectation to conduct your meetings like we are going to talk about for the public boards. So there's a little more flexibility. What the law says for you folks, particularly if you're a 501c3, that you need to create your own bylaws, and that becomes your rules that you need to conduct yourselves by. So if you have a noticing requirement that you put in your bylaws, that we're going to notice our board and our membership 2 weeks in advance, then that's what you need to follow. Those are your rules. And then we'll talk about what are the rules that are for public boards that will be for all public boards, whether you're city, county, but those are the folks that have a legal and constitutional responsibility to comply with the law. Did that make sense for those of you that, but I think it's grand if your private boards were to adopt similar expectations. So the people in your community, when they're interacting or interfacing with some sort of a governing board, they know what the expectations are, that there's not a lot of daylight between the two. Very good? Okay. We don't have a lot of time. I think we got to be out of here at 5:50. It's going to be tough for me to be able to, so what I'm going to try to do is I want to meet your needs in the amount of time that we have. So typically the way these roll for me is I don't have PowerPoint presentation. You're welcome. What we do is we do old school redneck PowerPoint with the flip charts. So what I like to start out was finding out what are some of the questions, concerns, issues that you're facing. This is what's kind of fun about coming to these, every 6 months is new issue came up. Boom, let's throw it up there and we'll talk about it. So really, you folks are going to guide what we talk about tonight. There's a lot of things I can cover. I can do this for 4, 6, 8 hours. I can do this all day long. But we've only got an hour and a half to cover the stuff. So I want to make sure it's really laser focused on your needs and issues. So we can start out with, I have poor handwriting and spelling. So just use your imagination. I just drop letters off and words and things, but figure it out. So what are some questions or issues you want to make sure we cover tonight? And that will guide our meeting, our discussion. And you had one that you wanted to bring up. Oh, now I put you on the spot. What happens when a board isn't conducting themselves consistent with the law? What do you do? What's the recourse? Who do you contact, right? Is it, so that's becoming a thing. That people just ignore the law. So we'll put on here bad actors. So when there's a board that is a bad actor, what do you do? How do you address that? And so the legislature recently passed some legislation that deals with this, and they haven't. That was part 1 that was done last session. Part 2 actually is done the first hearing in the Senate. I haven't heard when the second and the third readings will be happening, but it's likely going to pass, and so we'll have part 2 to that. We can talk a little bit about that. Okay, what else do you want to cover? That says relationship, all jammed into one spot. Okay, so we can chat a little bit about that, how, what that might look like. Good?
Why hasn't any language been put into the because the Attorney General recommends 48 hours, but there's nothing in the statute that says, I think it just says reasonable. And
Right.
why? Is that
Yeah, we can chat about that.
case?
Yeah, we'll talk. So we'll talk about the hierarchy of how the laws are. Yeah, and what our responsibilities are. So what is our relationship for conducting ourselves if the law is ambiguous? The Attorney General gives us some clarification. What is our expectation when it comes to that? So we can chat about that. Any attorneys in the room? Yes. All right. So I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night. So guess what? I feel like an attorney today. What are some thoughts from online? Yep. Yes, we'll talk about we'll talk about quorums and meetings. Yeah, we'll kind of unpack that, and we'll let you decide. Yeah, yeah, no, but yeah, we'll let you decide.
Electronic voting by their.
Okay. That says electronic voting. Yeah, we can chat about that, and where the flexibility is and not, where there's a hard line and where it might be flexible, particularly for the nonprofit associations.
Yeah, the board, I, and city staff too, is interested in whether they can have a social media presence or website presence.
Yeah. Okay. Chat on that. Yes.
Kind of along with that. The board in relation to the media, and things happening on the board, and what's the responsibility?
We'll put PIO for the Public Information Officer, but well, just as a reminder, what is that relationship? How do we communicate? Yeah. Okay.
Voting rights.
Sorry. So we'll put electronic voting, and that's going to be similar to this where we have, yeah. So yeah, both of those we'll cover all that. Yeah. How about a couple more from online or? The meeting before the meeting? Okay. Yeah. Okay. The incorporating, I'm assuming that's coming from the CD Swan, Condon area. Okay, we'll chat briefly about incorporation. Yeah, so you guys got to remind me when, yeah, because they can't hear. I'm yapping in this thing, and I'm terrible about repeating questions. So, okay. Well, this is, well, one more.
Voting to
Oh, yeah, okay.
best practices.
Yeah. No, yeah. And we'll put vote minutes. Yeah, so that'll hopefully remind us. Okay, let's do this. Everybody have a packet, and hopefully folks online. Okay, so it's on. There is a packet that's been uploaded to the Teams chat. So if you want to take a look in your Teams chat, folks online, there's a packet. It's about 30 pages. It's a PDF. This is also for those interested. It's also on our website. Our website is somewhere on the. I'm assuming that on the front there, yeah, www.msulocalgov.org. It's under resources. It may not be all in one. I haven't looked at it in a while, but it might be a series of handouts that you can download, so you don't have to get all 30 pages. You can look at it, whichever ones you're interested in. So that's available to you. And so let's just, I will try to go abbreviated because there's a lot of stuff I want to cover and we don't have a whole lot of time. So everything that we're doing, that we're going to talk tonight about, has a grounding in the Constitution of Montana's Constitution. So in 1889, we adopted a constitution. Wasn't all that great. We stumbled along as a state. You know, we were more motivated to become a state. And that was a prerequisite to become a state, is we needed to have a constitution. They made several attempts trying to push the process. Anyway, story. We just had a kind of a not so great a constitution. Lots of sections of the Constitution talked about railroads. Our current Constitution doesn't have a word about railroads. They didn't even mention it. But they spent pages and pages talking about roads. Anyway, 1972, we said, this is crap. We're going to do this over again. So we created a new Constitution. Okay, so and each Constitution is a reflection of where we are as a state, as a people at that time. So I happen to be one that I really like our current Constitution, and it is one that is used in law schools as they teach state constitutions. They look to ours as being one that's very thoughtful, small p, progressive in what they are addressing in that Constitution. And I think it's also a reflection of where we historically had been in the state, where was the seat of power in the state of Montana prior to 1972? Yeah. You're not wrong. It's, you know, Butte, Anaconda, there's a lot of power came out of that part of the state. And a lot of people were frustrated, citizens were frustrated that decisions that were being made, things that were impacting their lives, their ability to influence that was going on in government was really pretty much locked out. They were locked out of that process. So the pendulum swung really far the opposite direction to where now we have some of the most transparent expectations of government of all the 50 states. So if you look at the top of your packet, and I'll just say, you know, here's a copy of our Constitution. It's 72 pages, 76 pages, not very long. It fits in my back pocket. Very, very concise document. But in here, it's a very high level, high altitude outline of how government should conduct itself in the state of Montana. What is its roles, powers, and responsibilities, and what are the rights of the people that live within the state, or people within the state. So that's what that Constitution defines. And so if we put that at the top of our list, the Montana Constitution, Article 2 of the Constitution is our Declaration of Rights. So these rights that we've talked about in Montana, and if you look at sections 8, 9, and 10, they are pretty much the bedrock for what local government or government has to operate by. So if you look at the top of page 1 in your packet, section 8, section 9, and section 10 are highlighted there. They're just a simple single sentence. Just a single sentence that is written in the Constitution. The first one says the right to participate. The public has the right to expect governmental agencies to afford such reasonable opportunity for citizen participation in the operation of the agency prior to final decision as may be provided by law. So you as the public, all the public in the state has the right to expect a governmental agency to afford them a reasonable opportunity to participate, right? So now you have a constitutional right to participate in the goings on. The government is there to facilitate your interests and needs. So by being appointed to these boards, all the various boards that you're serving on, your role is to facilitate a conversation amongst the public about how we want to address this particular public issue, whether it's weeds or public water or sanitation or, you know, whatever it is, fire protection, all those things. What we've done is we've said we've come together as a community to do things collectively that we can't do individually. Right? I don't want to have a bucket of sand and a bucket of water and a shovel outside my door as my only means of protecting my home from a fire. But rather, it's better for me to pool my resources together with all the other neighbors in my community to say we're going to fund a fire department. We're going to train volunteers, we're going to buy apparatus, we're going to buy turnouts, and we're going to protect our community from fire with the specialization of a fire department. Same with the conservation district, same with the weed district. We want to protect ourselves from weeds and the impact it's going to have economically and environmentally in our community. So we have people that their sole purpose is to focus on that issue. And we're going to facilitate this conversation amongst our community. Transportation, right? We have a transportation need. So we're going to pool our resources together. We're going to buy buses. We're going to elect people or have people appointed on our behalf to think about and wrestle over the issues related to that area of interest. And they're going to either make decisions, depending on the board, you're going to make decisions that stand because you're a administrative board and you can make your own decisions, or like the community councils, you're going to make a recommendation to the county commission for final action, that you don't have the specific power to act, but you're an advisory. So there's going to be advisory boards or administrative boards. Yes?
Sorry, but
Huh?
when the federal government,
Oh, yeah, keep going.
as I read in the paper today, timber sale review, set forth the plan is finished. The opportunity for participation is reduced. So if that happens in Montana, which prevails, the state constitution or federal regulation?
So the feds, they will, we exist underneath the federal constitution. So yeah, I'll just say that they have primacy over our constitutions, yeah. As the city of Bozeman has its own local constitution, we call it a charter. And that has to conform with the state constitution, right? And the state constitution, so so yeah. Okay, is that making sense? So there's that expectation, you're facilitating this process. We have a constitution that guides us in that framework. And so, so that expectation of the public to participate, the next one says the right to know. No person shall be deprived of the right to examine documents or to observe the deliberations of all public bodies or agencies of state government and its subdivisions. So all you all are considered subdivisions of government, of the state government, except in the case in which the demand of individual privacy clearly exceeds the merits of public disclosure. And then the last one is the right to privacy. No individual right or privacy, let's see, no right of individual privacy is essential to the right of individual privacy is essential to the well-being of a free society and shall not be infringed without the showing of compelling state interest. So in that, we have a conflict. The public has a right to know, to observe your deliberations, and to examine documents. However, the public also has a right to privacy. And there might be times where those two will come in conflict. And so you've got to decide as a board, and particularly as a chairperson of that board, whose privacy or whose constitutional right am I going to violate? The public's right to know or this individual's right to privacy? But you have to make that decision. So oftentimes you'll find yourselves, as I like to draw, as a fulcrum, and you're trying to find balance in your community. You're an advisory board, you facilitate conversations. What level of service, of fire service, should we be expecting? Should we have a 3-minute response rate in our district? And if that's the case, are you willing to pay for it? But if you're only willing to pay for a 25-minute response time, well then your expectations better be changed, right? And so you're trying to find that balance. Chicken ordinance. We talked about chicken ordinance in Missoula. Y'all got one, I bet. You don't have a chicken ordinance here? Chicken ordinance? Chickens and urban chickens? Oh yeah, I can't imagine you guys not having chicken ordinance. That's fighting words in some places around the state. Some communities. Belgrade, you just bring up chickens and that's, they have fought that for 4 times, twice in the ballot. Yeah, so, oh, now they can, but they fought, yeah, they had 2 attempts for ordinances and then 1 on a ballot that lost, and they got a 3rd or 4th ballot or a 2nd ballot that passed, and now there's rumors that there's another petition going around to get it on the ballot again. So they love to fight about chickens in Belgrade. But what you're doing as this governing entity is you're trying to find and restore balance. And that's the thing, like in Belgrade, they're always out of balance about this chicken thing, right? And so it's, where's the winds of the interests of the community right now? And we will, if it's out of tilt, then we've got to move as the fulcrum to find that balance. Right? So those are some of the roles that you're playing as a representative of the public serving on this board with this focus to think about how do we serve our community best? How do we make decisions that are the best for the most? All right. Well, yes. Is that better? Okay. Where was I? This is wildly important. Okay, you got it. Legislature creates laws. So if you look in our packet there, we got that first 3 sentences at the top, and then the next like 8 pages or 5, 6 pages, 8 pages deal with defining in the law what that expectation is. How are we going to meet those 3 constitutional rights? So we've gone to 3 pages to 8 pages, or 3 sentences to 8 pages of statute or law. So Montana legislature, they're going to meet, they're going to create law, and then locally, all in your boards have an obligation and a responsibility to create your own rules of how your board is going to comply with those 8 pages of statute, and by virtue of that, complying with the Constitution. So now you've got to create a local policy or local policies that says this is when we're going to meet, this is how we're going to notice our meetings, this is how we're going to allow the public to participate, this is what our agenda looks like, this is all the other things like bylaws, right? When the chairperson isn't available, who's going to run the meeting? How do we make that determination? All that stuff is contained in your local policies. Now, as you're reading through the law, let's just jump down to, and it kind of tickles on one of your, I think it was your question about the Attorney General. Who had the question about the Attorney General? There we go. So 23103, 2 in that if you ever muck around in the state statute, 2 means title 2, chapter 3, part 1, and it's, lack of a better term for me, verse 3. So it says each agency, which what we didn't include in here because it's a page and a half, it has definitions. So laws mean something, right? And so when we use a word, we want to make sure we understand what the definition of that word is. And when they use the word definition, it says all boards, bureaus, commissions, committees of state and local government are included in there. So i.e. that would, when they say the word agency in this section of the law, they're talking about you folks. It says each agency shall develop procedures for permitting and encouraging the public to participate in the agency's decisions that are of significant interest to the public. Procedures or policies, this is how we're going to conduct ourselves. These procedures must ensure adequate notice. Adequate notice and assist public participation before final agency action is taken that is of significant interest to the public. So some ambiguous language, isn't there? Now, I don't have a problem if we're using ambiguous language in the Constitution. That's big level, high altitude kind of conversation. But here, it should be a little more on the nose. So what had happened is a lot of local governments, so the county may say, well, we're interpreting adequate notice to be 72 hours. The city says, well, we think it's 24. The fire district says, well, we think it's 48. And so you as a citizen, you're pinballing all around trying to think, where's the consistency in this? Aren't we all operating from the same Constitution? Why does every agency have a different definition of adequate notice? So that became intolerable. So some folks, the public, are pushing back and said, this is nuts. And so some city and county attorneys got together and they said, well, what is adequate notice? Now, you ever ask an attorney? You ask 5 attorneys for an opinion, you're going to get 8 opinions. So it depends, right? So in trying to figure that out, so who do you ask for clarification of the law when it's ambiguous like this? One, you could go back to the legislature and say, hey, clarify the law. They're like, we said it, we're doing it, and we're not going back. So they hadn't had much of an interest to do this. So the next option is go to the Montana Attorney General and you say, can you please give us an opinion? And in Montana, that opinion becomes the law until either the legislature clarifies the law or someone sues and the courts clarify the law. Now, that could have been an option. We could say, well, if you don't like the 24-hour notice, sue us and take us to court. But that's very costly. It creates some trust issues with the public, and it's not a good strategy. So that's why they went to the Attorney General to circumvent having that clarified by the courts. The other concern, if they had gone to the courts with a lawsuit saying, we don't believe that 24 hours is adequate notice here, nor meets the intent of the Constitution. The concern was the court would say, you're right, it doesn't. 24 hours is insufficient, but wouldn't tell you what is sufficient, because that would look kind of like legislating from the bench, which they wouldn't want to do. So they just say, that's not it. And so then you're still bumbling around with ambiguity. Well, we know it's not this, but we're still not sure what this is. So the Attorney General came out and said 48 hours would be considered adequate notice for the public to participate, but that amount of time should increase with the level of importance of the decision being made. Buying a fire truck, you think that's important? Yes. If you're going to drop $250,000 in a fire truck in a fire district, yeah, people might want to know. And a 48-hour notice may not be adequate. But the argument is, I'm hoping that you're not just bringing that up at the first meeting when you're making the decision to buy it, that it's likely something you've been talking about for years. So no one has really challenged what does it mean when that amount of time should increase, because typically those big issues are talked about over multiple weeks, months, or years before they make it. Go ahead. Yes, does not say. So that's where your policy comes in. 48 hours would be considered sufficient. So you've got to decide in your policy, do we want to include the weekend or not? Just know that if you put something out at 4:45 on a Friday for an 8 a.m. meeting on Monday, yeah, people may not like that. There's a couple counties that goofed around with that, and that they did their thing because they didn't want the public to show up. It was intentionally to avoid public participation in that meeting. And when the public found out, ooh, they were angry. I saw a hand here and over here. We'll go here first. 48 hours would be considered the minimum. The Attorney General decision is Missouri in 1989. So Mike, what's his first name? It was a requested. So the way the Attorney General works is when a city or county attorney asks for clarification of the law. So citizens can't just call up the Attorney General and say, hey, what does this mean? Yeah, so it's usually a request coming from an elected official or from a city or county attorney asking for that clarification. So they were pretty clear. You go to AG's website and they have all the, but it was 1989, I believe is what it was. Yeah. Is it? Well, yes, Mr. Olivares, right? Olivares?
Are you ready?
I remember. Go ahead.
Okay, so notice of a meeting. A notice of the weed board meeting. I'm chair of the weed board. I don't post nothing nowhere. It's my assumption that the county commissioners post the weed board meeting in the local papers because I don't have a budget. Yeah. I don't have a secretary. I don't have nothing other than us volunteers.
So so I would assume that that would be the role of the weed supervisor or the weed coordinator to make sure that that's happening.
You mean the paid employees, the paid people, okay?
So
Probably.
when there is a staff member, that's where you work with the staff member to ensure that that's being met. It could be that the fire board staff member would be the fire chief, the housing coordinator for the city, or whatever. Yeah, that they would be the person that would be there. It'd be your weed coordinator. It'd be your CEO or someone within the organization would make sure that that's happening. Yeah, commissioners aren't going to do that. There's people that do that. There's people that do. So you do it, yes. So now, what is that criteria? Now, if we drop down, this is new, this section here from last session, and we'll see what comes out this new session, the session's going on right now. But that the 2023 session, they added this whole section in the middle here so that B, I, double I, big A, big B, and that's all new. So each agency needs to publish an agenda, not just a notice that we'll be meeting Thursday night at 7 o'clock at the fire hall, but we're meeting Thursday night at 7 o'clock fire hall, and this is what we're going to be discussing. So that's new expectation. It was always implied. We always encourage that to go in your policies. And there's the thing I like about the policies and the bylaws is it creates continuity and consistency within your governing agency. That we're going to operate the same way regardless of who all is on the board. That this is how the board is going to conduct itself. So by adopting that, so you need to publish an agenda, and that is either in a newspaper of general circulation in the county where the agency is located and publishes electronic notices and links to meetings, agendas, free of charge. Do you know if the Missoulian does that? Does anybody know if they do it free of charge? Kind of does it. Yeah. So yeah, ever changing. And do they publish the whole agenda or just the notices of the? Yeah. So my guess is that given what you've said, that probably doesn't meet the criteria here that you're expected to post the whole agenda. So if you're finding yourself in a situation where we don't have it, like Petroleum County, they don't have a paper. We've got 400 people that live in that county. They're not going to have a newspaper. So they can either look to the Fergus County Argus, or they just need to, the next one, if a newspaper of general circulation in the county where the agency is located publishes electronic notices and links to meetings free of charge, the agency, the newspaper website, the agency shall provide the notice, right? So you can do it through the website, or double I says if the agency does not have the option of posting notices, you then post a link. I apologize for how dark it is. Post a link to the meeting agenda to the agency's primary website or on a social media site. So back to whoever asked about the social media. So if you don't have a newspaper that's willing to do it or consistently, you don't feel confident that it's going to get done consistent with the law, because I'm not going to rely on someone else to make sure that I follow the law. If I feel unsettled about their consistency, these are smelly markers, and it's making me a little microdosey up here. I'm going to put the caps on that. All right.
Well, don't stop being fun.
Yeah, well, yes, that's. That better? All right. Okay. So the other option, if you either have a website or a social media site. So creating a social media site. Now, here's the other concern I have. Anything that you're creating as a board, remember the public has a right to observe your deliberations and to examine your documents. A website or a social media site would be considered one of those things. That is a government created by the government. You need to have a records retention policy to that. And I would also be concerned about how that is used. And the Supreme Court has recently weighed in on the use of social media as a platform for free speech and everything else. So if you do not have a social media site and you want to create one, I would suggest that you develop a policy. I would also suggest that you do not turn comments on. that if you want to engage and participate in dialogue about something within our jurisdiction, we meet Thursday night down at the fire hall at 7 o'clock. This is where we come and have the discussion. We're not going to carry on discussion as a nameless, faceless person out there jibber jabbering about whatever. So we're going to turn the comments off. If you've got comments on, turn it off and don't turn them back on again, but don't flip them on and off and don't remove people. Then you get in big trouble. So our suggestion, if you start with it, not as an interactive platform, but as a way to communicate to your constituency, this is what we're doing, when we're doing it, and how we're doing it. So think of it as a one-way street, not as a dialogue. Dialogue so far is going to happen in a place like this, a setting like this. Does that make sense? So there is that expectation. If the Missoulian's not going to do it, I don't know if there's a paper coming out of Sealy Lake or something that they might do it, but that would be what you do.
So I just checked my website. On the front of the ecology, these are listed by date. Our weed meeting this Thursday is not on there.
Ooh.
We're in violation, correct?
Well, I'll just say, the law says that you need to notice your meetings. You can decide whether it's violation or not. But yeah, so I would suggest that you get the agenda out. So this requires an expectation for you as governing entity to have your, this is Missoula, right? Can I say crap in a sack, or is that inappropriate? See, now it's, I'm sure it's, AI has now just got that written down. So you're pooping a group, get your act together. So you've got to anticipate ahead of time, we're going to have our meeting, what is going to be on the agenda? How do we plan out the agenda ahead of time? And I would also suggest that you don't have a meeting to talk about the agenda. But you have, you can email out your board and say, hey, this is the things I'm planning to talk about at the meeting as the chair. If you have something you'd like to add to it, send me an email, but not as a group email or group chat, because then you're creating a quorum. We'll talk about what a meeting consists of in a minute. Go ahead.
So both the city and the county have an agenda portal. Like each jurisdiction has a place where they post all the agendas and all the minutes for all their related boards.
Yes. Excellent. It exists. I'm happy that it exists. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We good so far? Have we crossed anything off our list yet? Oh, AG, yeah. So is that making sense how this flow works? Okay. Notice that one there. Good? Okay. Now, so now we understand noticing. There's a statutory, the law now has an expectation for you and gives you guidance on how to notice your meetings. There needs to be an agenda. This is what we're going to be hearing, discussing, and acting on. It has to be out 48 hours ahead of time. Okay, that's good so far. All right, let's slide down to the next page. What I have done, some of your cities, some of your city boards and publication notice, proof of publication, if you're going to be having a hearing, or if it says in the law, say water rates, you're going to raise your water rates, or maybe the fire district is going to do something that requires a hearing and you need to publish the hearing notices. There's a different expectation from noticing a regular meeting to noticing a hearing. Hearings are different than just a regular public meeting. And they're often required by law when you're acting in a certain way or trying to do certain things. The law will say you need to have planning boards will have a lot of hearings, zoning commission will have hearings, board of adjustments, those types of things. Fire districts, water sewer districts will have hearings. You'll probably have a hearing when you're adopting your weed plan, your master weed plan. I can't remember what they call it, your comprehensive weed plan. You likely have a hearing saying, look, this is an opportunity for the public to come weigh in. We're gonna have a very formal sit-down meeting. There's a formal way, it's like notice for 2 weeks. But you'll see that there's a complimentary one for counties, but on that page 2, 7-1, 21, and it looks almost the same for counties. We didn't want to put both of them there because it takes a whole page up and yeah. So just to know that there's that distinction. Proof of publication, they want to make sure that it's done. It has to be published twice, at least 6 days of separating the publication. Sometimes the newspapers don't always follow through on it. So you've just got to prove that we sent it to the newspaper and what your expectation was. They may have forgotten. But it used to be that if the newspaper forgot or failed to put the second notice in, then you have to start over again. And sometimes with land use decisions, that's on a timetable, and you run out of time. And so now the legislature has allowed you to say, hey, look, we gave them, here's our email, this is what we asked them to do. They failed to do it. And with that proof, you can move forward with your timeline and not have to start over again. Most of your boards may not have to go through that more technical part, but I thought I'd bring that up. Let's look at what constitutes a meeting. There's 5 things that are required to have a legal meeting. Remember, I just covered up incorporation. I can't forget that. There's 5 things that are required for a meeting. For a legal meeting, we'll say at a legal meeting. And if each of these 5 things are not done, then it's not a legal meeting. How about that? I'm not an attorney, so I won't tell you it's illegal. It's just not consistent with the law. That's my workaround language. Not consistent with the law. All right. So what are some things that have to happen at a meeting for it to be considered legal? Okay. We need notice. Yes. And agenda. Yep. Quorum. Yep. Public comment. Yep. That's 4. Who's their minutes? Yes. And the last one, if you look on page 5, 23203, I'm sorry, 23202, it defines a meeting, and it says the convening of a quorum of the constituent members, whether corporal or by means of electronic means. So corporal being in person or connected electronically. So when you talk, I think someone mentioned about electronic meetings and electronics, we'll get to that here in just a second, the electronic part of it. So you can have a meeting electronically, like through Zoom, you can have it over the phone. We'll talk about that criteria, or in person. And the important part is the next phrase, to hear, discuss, or act. Now, why am I making a big fuss about the word or in that phrase? Any of the 3. So because, and again, words mean something. The legislature intentionally used the word or rather than and, because if it was and, all 3 of those things would have to happen. But or any one of those things. So if you have a quorum and you're hearing something within your jurisdiction, you're having a meeting. If you're a quorum and you're discussing something, whether electronically or in person, you're having a meeting. Or if you're taking action, you're having a meeting. So any one of those 3 things. So now, as we think about the electronic part of it, right? So now we're emailing out, hey, we're having a meeting Thursday night. Here's your chance. If you got something to put on the agenda, let me know. And someone hits reply all and says, hey, I was talking to Larry on Main Street the other day, and this is what he said. This is what I think we ought to do. What just happened? We've got a quorum. We're discussing something. We've heard something. We're discussing that. And then someone else weighs in and says, yeah, I think blah, blah, blah. And pretty soon we got a little chit chat going on, either on the text stream, on your Signal account. So you're planning out when we're going to attack those noxious weeds. Yeah, gosh. Okay. So proud. So that is a meeting. And if it's just a quorum and you're doing those things, all these other things have to happen. Remember, we go back to the Constitution. There's that expectation that we are going to allow the public to participate in this process. They have a right to observe your deliberations. So you've heard the term legislation is like the process of making sausage. It looks kind of ugly, but at the end it tastes pretty good or whatever. So the public in Montana have a constitutional right to watch that idea from its infancy, its formulation, to engage, participate, fuss, cuss, argue with you along with the board, to weigh in on that up until the point of decision making. That is their constitutional right. So if that is happening outside of a legally noticed, agendized public comment minutes, if those things aren't happening, then your meeting would be outside the legal requirements. And bad things happen when that happens, right? It's never a good thing. One, it loses trust. The other thing, it might cost you a whole bucket of money.
To clarify, it's like here discuss or act things that are within the jurisdiction of the community. You can talk about all kinds of things that are not
Yeah.
that the district agency or the board doesn't have any influence with. One question related to this. So coordinating meetings, for instance. If you had a chat with other board members, sorry, if you had a chat with other board members just to even figure out when somebody is available for the next meeting, it would seem that that doesn't, that would like be beyond the public meeting part, but you can't talk about necessarily maybe why you're having the meeting or a few other things.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So that's ministerial acts. So the ministerial acts is one of those exceptions that, hey, if it's just coordinating, there's not a public interest in the conversation of creating the meeting. It's the public interest when we're talking about something within our jurisdiction. So you're correct. And so just making that distinction, that if, as long as we're keeping it to that ministerial, it's not an exercise of judgment. We're not engaged in policy, creation, discussion, implementation, or anything else. It's purely for the care and feeding of our organization, and when we're going to meet, that's fine. What this word hearing? Yeah. So someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I think we should ban chickens in town," if that's within your purview. So you're hearing that from a constituent. Yeah. And so if you're sitting around, so here's a great example. There's a 5-member board, and 3 of you are hanging out at the high school basketball game in the what do you call it, the gym, and you're chatting about whatever. You're chatting about the game, and you're doing your thing, and someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, I've been meaning to talk to you folks about blah, 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 blah." Something within your jurisdiction. They see that now that's a problem because there's a quorum of you and you're hearing something from the public. And so we want to have that done while we're in a formal setting, in an environment like this where everybody can hear it and respond and react to it. Yeah. Yep. So they're bringing stuff to you, and that's what we're hearing. So this is that part of that relationship, right? As you facilitate this process within the public sphere, that you're in that role to hear, create and generate the discussion around it, and then distill it as a board and make the final decision. So the representative government model, right? The other alternatives, we all show up at the high school gym, and we collectively as a community talk about and discuss and make decisions collectively. But we've decided, there's way too much Netflix to watch to have me go down every Thursday night to the high school gym. I don't got the time. So instead, why don't we elect representatives to represent our interests, and they will make decisions on our behalf. So I'm giving them authority to make a decision on behalf of me. That's what you all are. People have given you their decision-making power to make decisions that are going to affect their lives. However, with the understanding and expectation that you're going to allow me ample opportunity to participate, be aware of what you're talking about, and be able to weigh in on that discussion. So I'm not completely out. I'm not, I love this one. One of my favorite sections of the law. Look at the very top of page 5. Legislative intent, liberal construction for open meetings. Oh my gosh. The legislature finds and declares that public boards, commissions, councils, and other public agencies in this state exist to aid in the conduct of the people's business. It is the intent of this part that actions and deliberations of all public agencies shall be conducted openly. The people of the state do not wish to abdicate their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. Towards these ends, the provisions of this part shall be liberally construed. So if there's ever a question, should we or shouldn't we, it's usually errs on the side that we should, right? Should we notice the meeting? Yes, we probably should. So it's always on that liberal construction that we want to have it more open, more transparent, rather than less transparent. And I think it's well said that we're not abdicating my sovereignty to an agency to make decisions on my behalf. But you have a duty to facilitate on my behalf this conversation. Oh, so much fun. This is grassroots stuff. This is where democracy is going to survive at this level, if that's possible. And I will make no other comment. All right. Is that good? So what have we covered here now? Oh, and then the quorums and the voting. I think you asked about the voting online. So that's not a thing in public boards. It could be a thing in the private nonprofits or associations where they're not conducting the public, the business of the public. They're not paid for, they're not using public funds, and they're not appointed by a public board. So the expectation is that if you're making a decision electronically or voting electronically, the public has a right to observe that deliberation, to weigh in and make comments. So it's the same with giving a proxy vote. I don't know how the legislature does it, but the legislature does it. I'm giving you my proxy vote. I'm going to go to McDonald's, and so this next vote, I want you to vote on my behalf. They'll do that quite often. Or, if they're in conflict with two different committees, I got to be in two committees or meet at the same time. Here's how my concern with that, and I think they do it, whatever. Don't model what you do based on what the legislature does. But it's one of those things that I can't remember what I was going to say now. Anyway, go ahead. You had the thought.
So if I were to, thank you. You're hovering over here at the right time. So if I can frame what I heard in a scenario, if we have an open public meeting where there is discussion and we run out of allotted time and staff says, hey, we're going to send out a vote. And the vote, of course, goes out to the quorum. If there is no additional discussion and all that's being recorded by email or what have you is a vote, and at the next public noticed meeting, we come back with the results of the vote, we would be in compliance. However, a reply all, and we start having side conversations amongst the bodies, the quorum, prior to making a vote. Now we are outside of sunshine law and
yeah. Excuse me. Let me see. So what I would suggest with that scenario is I would get legal counsel to verify that, yes, we can. I feel extremely uncomfortable about that. And I'm trying to find, I was just quickly looking in a spot that might provide some language that would back me up, where I'm looking, I'm not finding it. So, oh, wow. So there may be that the attorney, city, right? You said city, so that, yeah, Mr. Brooks is gone. Oh. But anyway, no, not Brooks. It was Nugent. Yeah. But I would visit. 30 pages. So it was always, no ambiguity there. It was pretty clear. But yeah, I would ask the attorney, say, would this be consistent with the law, or do we need to make sure that is done in the daylight? Part of it is the accountability, but you're saying we're coming back and we're saying this is the result of it. And so the other question is yeah, okay, yeah, yeah.
And I hear what you're saying, which is err on the side of very right.
Yeah, the liberally construed part of it too is that, yeah, that, is this okay? Well, let's do it on the other side. Yeah. Good questions though. Do we get enough electronic voting? And we had one on the vote. What was another one on the? Did we cover it all? The electronic part.
What I was thinking is if you were having a board meeting and one of your members was part of the quorum, was zooming in and part of the discussion, and then you had a vote and it was a public meeting, then that would be okay.
Yes. Yeah.
It's where nobody's there and you do the vote or whatever.
Yeah, or we're doing it online later on or something via email or
that
text.
Was my question is, in an emergency, like our little windstorm, when
Okay.
you got to spend some money,
how do you handle something like that, especially when you're running up against things like weddings and deadlines and everything has to be cleaned up? And
Yeah, so
we went to the county attorney.
yeah, so on like the windstorm thing, and if you're an agency that has to respond and you have funds, you're weighing in. So yeah, that would be considered an emergency. There are statutes that deal with emergency contracting and different things that deal with that. What we recommend, and so it could be if you are, so I'll just say off the top, 99% of boards are not, there's not a thing as an emergency. You may feel it's an emergency, but it's not an emergency.
Yeah.
If you're an agency that is responding in an emergency situation,
Right.
then that might put you in that spot. And then you can maybe look at how, in the case of emergency, how are we going to set the expectations for the public? What we recommend is if we need to meet quickly, like say, okay, we're going to have our meeting at 4 o'clock today. We're going to get on the radio. We're going to do an email blast. We're going to do as much we can to communicate to the public that we're going to have a quorum that's going to make a decision. We're going to make the decision. Then at the next regularly scheduled meeting, we're going to ratify everything we made. We have, again, the opportunity for the public. They can weigh in at the time, if they can show up, if they're noticed, and we'll do it again at the second go round.
So you can get the trees out of the doors and the roof.
Yeah. If you're an advisory, yeah, then if you're not the final arbiter of that, then it would, here's our recommendation for you to act in this way, and they can make that final decision. Yeah. Was that with a public board or was that a nonprofit or a public board? Yeah. Yeah. Quorums meeting, did we cover the quorums? I can't remember go ahead.
Something that I've noticed has previously sometimes led to confusion. So let's say you have an 11-member board, and if you have a subcommittee that's defined within the board, and let's say the subcommittee has 5 members, when 3 members of that subcommittee meet, that's a quorum, and it has to be a meeting. You can't just say it's 3 members of the board. Anytime a committee meets on on whatever is within the jurisdiction of that committee, then the quorum rules apply within that subcommittee. So
Yeah, whenever you're making a subdivision of every subdivision of government. So if you're making another subdivision of a committee, that becomes its own entity. I always love it. He said, well, it's not, we only put 2 members of the committee on that. And it's like, yeah. So look on page 5. 23203. We didn't do the top part, but let's look at number 6, 23203, bottom third. It says any committee or subcommittee appointed by the public body or the association described in this section, subsection 2, for the purpose of conducting business that is within the jurisdiction of the agency is subject to the requirements of this section. You had a wonderful test case here in Missoula. Thank you. We appreciate you guys because you're always doing stuff that clarifies the law. A lot of Supreme Court stuff comes out of here. AG opinions come out of here. Always pushing the envelope. But I think it was the school board appointed a committee of parents and staff to review the different schools of which ones they wanted to close down. And they're meeting without notice. They created a criteria spreadsheet. They evaluated all that without any public input or public notice. That group showed up at a board meeting and said, here's our results, and the winner is, right? And you would imagine that some people found that to be inappropriate and sued them, and the court found in the favor of the citizens, the parents, basically saying that they had no opportunity to weigh in, to know what the criteria was, to meaningfully participate in the decision-making process. So it was a violation of the code. Yeah, huh? If you have a quorum that's texted amongst themselves on an issue within the jurisdiction of that board, then you are conducting a meeting. You're either hearing or discussing. You're either sharing information. Here's an article I read. Here, read this. You're sharing information. That should be conducted so everybody sees it in real time. And that texting, that's also a public record. That needs to be captured and stored according to the retention schedule for local governments. So here's the deal. It's a big pain in the butt. Social media, texting, all that stuff is a big pain in the butt. And you will be held accountable for it. So if bad thing would be happen is if you got sued over some decision you made and you're going to get subpoenaed for all the records, any communication, and they're going to list them all. It's, you know, some Snapchat to email, text, phone records, Signal apparently will probably be added to that list. Any of that social media platforms I've never even heard of. The attorneys have a long list of those things that just becomes a blanket thing. All that information that is contained in those accounts could be part of discovery. And some attorney somewhere is going to be paid $250 an hour to review your whole text stream of all text messages within that, and they'll be deciding whether this is private or public, private, public. What's that? It all counts, yeah. If it's something within their jurisdiction, whether you make a decision on it or not, it's, yeah. Yeah.
What about that room assistant person, Siri? What about Siri?
Oh, I don't know.
Alexa, does that even count too?
I have no idea. Yeah, it's, I'll tell you, the legislature's not even keeping up with this. And so there's the world is becoming so rapidly changing, legislature's still trying to figure out how do we capture that. And I don't know. I don't even know if I do not recall that the records retention schedules deal with anything even with AI. But usually there's a product that comes out of that, but yeah.
Back in the dark ages, before
just a
all this
telegraph, right?
electronic stuff.
Yeah.
If there were 3 board members out of a 5-member board and they were discussing something at a wedding or something, it counted.
Yeah.
So the rule might be just don't text,
Yeah.
don't reply all, etc.
Here's the thing is, we talk about government efficiency. Talking about a lot right now. But there is baked into it, it's not designed for your convenience or to be efficient for you, it's designed for the public. So yes, the decision-making process is intended to be deliberative, that we're not making quick, rapid decisions like we're making a decision today without public's ability to weigh in and participate, because again, you're facilitating that conversation and you're trying to find and restore balance within society. That's why we have government. So there is an intentionality to its deliberate. Better? I don't remember. I know, it's like, and I don't remember what I was explaining. But it's not, yeah, so it's, yeah, so to be efficient is noticing it right at 48 hours, to having your meetings run efficient. That's where your efficiency is. But trying to speed things up, to make it go faster, to cut corners, you're usually then cutting out the public, which is the very purpose of why you exist. You're facilitating this broader conversation. So, yeah, so here's my suggestion. If you're going to have email communication, which I can't imagine you not existing without email communication. And so the county may, or the city may, or create an email account just for you. And I don't want to put any burden on anybody here. You're like, yeah, we ain't doing that, Dan. Or I would create my own Gmail account that says Weed Commissioner 1 at gmail.com. And all of my official communication is going to take place via that email. This is the one I give to the county or the city or whomever. All my official communication, all the agendas, everything comes through that account. If there's any ever question, I just turn over my username and password, and there it is. And when I leave and cycle off the board, I give that email and account to my replacement. Say, here you go. So now we have a record of it. And my personal life and communication electronically is not tied into. So if I have the dan.clark@gmail.com does all of my letters to my grandma, my grandkids, whatever else I want to do on that account, and my official work. It may be that I've got to turn over my username and password to the city attorney or county attorney, that they're going to review all that and start figuring out what's private, what's public. And that's just a lot of waste of time. Even if I don't have anything to hide, it's just a huge waste of time.
That's good that you brought that up because with specific Gmail accounts so we can discuss amongst ourselves on that form opposed to a personal platform. Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up.
I think it's wise. And then just limit your communication via text.
Quick question related to the quorum. Might you just speak a couple sentences about what's a walking meeting?
Okay, good question. So what is a walking meeting? So what that could be is I'm going to avoid having a meeting where we're all going to sit down and talk about something, but I'm going to go talk to you. What do you think about this? And I'm going to talk to you and say, well, I talked to Spain. Oh, nice. So I talked to Spain. This is what he said. What do you think? And now Patrick. So then I go to, hey, I talked to Patrick in Spain. This is what they said. What do you think? Right. And so I'm avoiding having a meeting. They call that a walking quorum. Great example. There was a city that had the mayor and the council were, cross-threaded over a public works project. And the council wanted it to happen one way. The mayor's conducting it a different way. And so the chair of the commission, the city commission, went to each of the council members and said, hey, I drafted this letter rebuking the mayor. Read it. If you agree with it, sign it. If you agree with it, read it, sign it. It went through, and 5 of the 7 council members signed that letter. They brought it up at the meeting, said, Mayor, we all think this, and they read it into the meeting in the record, and the mayor said, fantastic. Can I have a copy of that? Because that's going to be Exhibit A of our lawsuit against you for having an illegal meeting. Sued them, and the court ended up removing 5 or 4 of the council members off and banned them from running for office for another 5 years or something, because they violated the public's trust, violated the Constitution, violated the law by having this, they were making action, they were agreeing to something. Because the mayor said, when was the meeting held that this was discussed and you took action on it? Because by law, the mayor is the one that is at all the meetings. Unless they can't be in, but yeah, they have they got busted.
I was on a national committee, board chair, whatever, and there was a closure of public lands. And so somebody in the Western United States started a petition letter, and it was a letter, it wasn't a petition. And I think out of the group of us, 60 of us signed it. If somebody had decided that it was improper, we could have all been in court, right? We were all board members.
If you had done it independently, it's like, I agree with this, I'm signing it, not as a member of this
But we were all
commission.
signing it as members of the committee.
That could be a problem.
Well,
potentially.
fortunately, the person in charge.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's only a violation if you're caught as violating, I guess.
Yeah.
Or create, well,
It's
no.
still a violation.
But it could create a lot of trust issues.
Yeah. and
Right.
It could create potential issues. I mean, as boards, we could have been, well, we were eliminated. That's what happened.
Yeah. Someone asked a question that was similar to that. If it's not a quorum, then you're all right. So then it's just 2 community members talking about a community issue there's not a legal expectation there. The other concern I have is when if you're signing on or writing a letter to the editor, as a community council member, writing a letter to the editor, rebuking something or something going on, and you're signing it as a community council member, evoking that you are speaking on behalf of the council. Right, and so that's where it comes down. I think that was the PIO thing. It's like if we meet as a community council, we have this discussion, we all agree on this as our position and stance, and we're asking you to write. Don't do this. I'm not advocating this, but and then we're asking you to write the letter and represent us, and then we'll meet again and say, yeah, we all agree to this. That type of a thing. I just got a call the other day from a nonprofit, or it was from a public board that had a nonprofit came to them and said, hey, can you sign this letter that needs to go off to such and such support by your board supporting this initiative? And they said, it's within 48 hours when it's due. We can't meet. I can't even call a special meeting. They're very upset with them. It's like, why can't you just do this? They said, well, because we have expectations. We have the law we've got to follow. All right. Social media website. Did we talk about that enough? Website? Yeah. Okay. Ooh, we can cross things off, huh? How are we doing on time? Oh, we're not doing too bad, I don't think. That's done. What else is on here? Electronic voting, we got that covered. Good enough? All around. We had that on there twice. That's a double. Yeah, I think we just covered that as the public information officer. Yeah, so that's where I think having a public information or someone that's representing us. Yeah. I was working in a large metro municipality. They had problems with a new council member that just didn't understand that you are part of a body. You have your own interests, but you're also part of a body. And it's kind of hard, right? How do I? And so he wanted to flex it out and say, hey, look, I still have my voice. I'm still going to do my thing. It's like, great. And what he was doing was he's going out on the news and he was saying, I don't agree with this, and really throwing the rest of his colleagues under the bus, or taking credit. Yeah, I've been pushing this thing. Finally, the council came along and came on board with me, and they, taking credit for some of the decisions the council made. Well, yeah. And so ended up, so there's a lot of discussion around whether the commission could censure him or try to bring that person. I said, so what ended up happening is this individual alienated himself from the rest of the council. They can get all sorts of things done without that person's vote or participation. And it got to a point where he was realizing I am no longer having any impact on the commission, but they have completely ignored me and put me in the corner. And so then I am no good to my constituency who've elected me to represent their voice. So it took him a while, it was about 18 months for him to figure out, oh, I am part of a body. I am part of a group. And I need to vigorously, in the right setting, advocate for the positions of my constituency. But at the end of the day, the group's going to make a decision, and I got to be on board with that decision. And it's our decision, not they finally complied with me. So once they figured that out, he modified his language, became more of a team player, and recognized now he does have influence in policy making. He can represent that perspective that hadn't been represented before because he had alienated himself. And so that's part of the governing process, right? If we just want to sit there and yell at each other, well, that's not. And then it's all about what's the majority, right? Rather than how do we come together and solve our complicated issues that we face in our communities. So I'm not a fan of seeing that 4-3 votes. I'd much rather work on the issue until we can find some level of consensus before we bring it up for a vote. And that's why I hear people say all the time, well, they're just all rubber stampers of the weed board coordinator. It's like, well, not necessarily, because the weed board coordinator or the staff member may bring the issue to the board and they work on it until they find consensus. And yes, it'll be probably a 5-0 vote because they found the consensus. And it's not that, so don't think that there's a 5-0 vote that they're just a rubber stamp to the mayor or the manager or whomever. But anyway, you got my point. All right, let her rip. It's just obnoxious. So that subcommittee, if it's an appointed subcommittee by that board, then that committee has its own quorum size. So that would be a governing body that needs noticing. And does that make sense? Yeah. So again, it's not designed for the board, necessarily for the board's convenience. That it's going to be kind of it's an administrative hassle to manage and wrangle this process to comply with the law and not create an inadvertent violation of the open meeting law. Here's the problem: is if it's particularly if it's really contentious, right? And like I said, misspoke. Just because you're not getting called out, but when you're called out on it, that's really bad. So and you say, well, no one's really going to care, so we'll just be fast and loose because we just get stuff done. We had a board not far from this location here, probably 60 miles away, that received a large grant, thought, well, this is going to be wildly inconvenient for us to meet a lot of times to discuss our big master plan. And so literally they went in their basements, and for the next 6 months, they planned, via email, and they crafted this big master plan for that board. And then they had meetings posted all over the county saying, hey, come to our big unveiling of our master plan for this infrastructure. And once the county attorney realized, oh my, you did not have one noticed meeting in the last 6 months where you discussed this. You can't come out with this because that would be a violation. So it took the county attorney, the city attorney, and our staff 2 hours prevailing upon this board for them to finally acquiesce and say, okay, we got to start this process over again. And we got to do it where, and here's the deal. Had they noticed the meetings, probably no one would have showed up anyway. Right? So just notice the meetings, comply with the law, and do your thing. So they had to start all over again spend 6 months to do what they had already planned to do. But they, again, now, you think a lot of people are showing up at that meeting? Oh, heck yeah. Right? And the trust then between that board and the community just went down quite a bit. And they have to now rebuild that trust within that community again. And that's a huge sacrifice. I saw a hand, here we go.
What about adding items to the agenda once the meeting starts where you say, does anybody have an item to add to the agenda?
That's a Robert's Rules thing. It's not a thing in our world because the public needs to have adequate notice of what you're going to be hearing, discussing, or acting on. Yeah. Yep. So it's like Robert's Rules will have like a boilerplate. They'll say, that'll be something you ask, and oftentimes that's brought into our public board agendas. And so we encourage that to be removed, that this is it. When we posted 48 hours ago on the website, that's what we're discussing. And now go back to page 1. We didn't get to this. It's at the bottom, number 2. C, well, I guess letter C. The agenda must include an item allowing public comment on any public matter that is not on the agenda of the meeting and that is within the jurisdiction of the agency conducting the meeting. So, right, that's what we're talking about. Listen, weeds, we're talking about weeds. Mosquitoes, we're talking about mosquitoes. But if you want to come and talk to our mosquito board about weeds, it's not, yeah. So we encourage you to go talk to the weeds and vice versa, right? Go talk to the weed board, they can deal with it, right? So we encourage that public participation. And the next sentence says, however, the agency may not take action on any matter discussed unless specific notice of that matter is included on the agenda and public comment has been allowed on that matter. So if something comes up during that public comment period where the public comes in and says, hey, I think we need to have a chicken ordinance, how do you think that happened? Because city councils aren't sitting around saying, ooh, what kind of new ordinance can we dream up this week? They're not doing that, but they're usually responding and reacting to a public interest. So 10 years ago, it became very popular for cities to adopt these ordinances around chickens. So you get the chicken lobby showing up, there's 10 of them showing up, and they're hammering on that council public comment until finally they say, okay, let's put it on the agenda, let's have a discussion, then we'll start the process, and they start facilitating that conversation. What's super funny, we had one town up on the High Line, wintertime, I've probably told you guys this before, fighting over chickens. It's wintertime. What else are you going to do on the High Line in wintertime? They're packing the high school gym, 300 people showing up to fight and fuss and cuss over chickens. There's one guy there every meeting. He's there weighing in, you got to allow chickens, blah, blah, blah. So they finally adopt the chicken ordinance. I think it went to a vote. They adopt the chicken ordinance. clerk is there getting the mail, the post office 6 months later after it's gone into effect and sees this guy. It's like, hey, I have noticed you haven't come in to get your permit for chickens. He's like, I don't want chickens. So what are you talking about? You were at every meeting advocating strongly for chickens. Yeah, I don't want chickens. I don't care to have chickens. But I want those in my community that want to have chickens, the right to have chickens. That is a beautiful thing about democracy, right? His voice counts. He can sway. But it's not my interest, but I think that's who we are as a community. So we are a chicken town. And I don't have to have chickens, but we're a chicken town, right? Unlike Belgrade, where the council, it just seems like there's 4 people in the mayor that don't like to be chicken people.
I want to go back to just an earlier conversation here a couple of minutes ago relative to like in this case, a weed board's vote. You know, you said it, they had a discussion, they had a vote, it went, in that example you gave, five out of the 6 voted for it, or 5 out of 5 voted for it. So I'm in my little pea brain going, okay, so that's an example of the responsibility of the board on behalf of the commissioners to review an initiative and screen it, pluses and minus relative to the county, and make a vote to it. And then what the typical next step is, that goes before the commissioners. I'll give you a real life example. To put this particular plant on the county weed board, okay? So it goes to the commissioners, and I guess what's typical, the paid employee presents it to the commissioners. And it's already understood, not necessarily said, but understood that the commissioners' appointees, not employees, but appointees, have already screened it. They've already looked at the pros and cons, and they don't even have to show up to the commissioners' meeting because the paid employee will present it. And that's the expectation. And because of that, there isn't a lot of talk between Jim to the commissioners, and that's okay. Right?
Yeah. Sorry. So on that relationship, right? So the board and the county and your relationship, if the board is okay with that level of relationship, you feel like the commission is hearing what you have, that they're considering it, whatever recommendations you're making to them, and you feel that relationship is working well, great. For boards that don't feel like, or the commission doesn't feel like, I'm not sure I know what's going on, I don't feel like I'm in touch with that board, what we've encouraged is to have quarterly meetings where just asked to be put on the agenda every quarter, and you come in and you can say, hey, this is what the weed board's working on. Here's the last 6 months we've been working on these projects. We've been working on our master weed plan. What do they call it? Comprehensive weed plan. We're working on that. We're halfway through. Here's a draft so far, or whatever. And this is what we're planning to do the next 3 months, and we hope to have it, and so they're just aware of what's going on. I think that would be a helpful thing regardless of whether you feel like you have a good relationship or not. Just try to get, it might be quarterly, it might be every 6 months or something, but get some audience with the commission so they feel like they're appraised of what's going on. Now, the way the system's designed, we have 3 county commissioners. They're elected to represent the county on all things that fall within the jurisdiction of the county. Counties have a huge scope of concern, right? From child and newborn vaccination to nursing mothers to noxious weeds, mosquitoes, to roads and bridges. If a county were to be sold to a venture capital firm, they would break it up into its constituent parts, and then they would sell it all off. It doesn't make sense to have this much diversity under one roof, and to expect these 3 individuals to be experts on all those diverse issues and concerns out there. So what we've created, the model we've created, is we have all these boards out there, just, all these boards. I think right now we're about 26 to 30, somewhere between 26 and 30 potential boards that can be created. And as you all well know, anything that has a public purpose and that there is a need for the governing body, the city or the county, can create. So the food policy committee or board, that's not even found in the law. right? There's no thing out like a weed board is found in the law. Fair board's found in the law. So what happened is it a city or county? So the county recognized there's a need that exists here. So we have the authority, and there's a public interest. So we're going to create a board. So if you look at in your packet, the very last section, I want to say it's like page 27, maybe. Oh, look at me. Nope, 23. And this will roll, since we're there, we're going to hang out there for a second because there's some other things I want to cover there. That is the section, I think. Is that right? Where am I at here? That's nepotism. Oh my goodness, what's going on here? It should be general board statutes and someone can mind. What am I looking at here? I'm missing a bunch of pages. Give me another word.
You are missing the.
Yeah, I'm just stuck on page 22. Over here. There we go. Proper one. I wonder why this felt so light. So, any governmental purpose you can create. So, like the food. All right. Was it 23 I said? Yeah. So anything that has, you can create. And here's the statute. This is the framework that the city or the county can follow to create a new board that may not be statutorily defined. So we have already figured out by law, we've said, here are the common things that about every county should have or be able to create. Not every county has a mosquito board. Yeah. Yeah. You get up on the High Line, oh, whew, is that an eagle? No, that's a mosquito. So they have, and that's by law, and it defines what the purpose and role and the decision-making scope of that particular board. But food policy advisory, that's something that they said, hey, they followed this statute to create. There's like, should it be elected or appointed? Should we, and it goes through all these little decision points. It's like a decision tree that you go through that and you kind of craft it and you create a resolution and then you adopt it. It can either be done by petition where the public petitions the local government to say, hey, we feel there's a need and we think we're, through this petition, like 15% of the voters sign a petition saying we want this board. That can be a way to do it, or the governing body can create it without the petition. You have two options. Is that making sense? Okay, now, did that answer the question that, I don't know where the question came from. Is it good? Tell us if it wasn't. Go ahead.
So kind of getting back to the bad actor.
Yes, we're there.
Okay, so you have the board agendized items. Then there's a section for non-agendized items, public comment. Someone during that section goes off on a tangent. How do you deal with that?
3 minutes? Oh, no.
Also, to add to that, what if it's a board member that goes off on the tangent?
Yeah. Oh. Where am I here? No. Well, it does the Christmas tree thing. So in your local policies, you can have ground rules. And this is what our suggestion is that you create expectations for how the public engages your board and create expectations for how the board members conduct themselves. So you could say, look, as a board member, you address everything through the chair. So if you need that level of formality to retain good governing process, so someone's good parliamentary procedure, Mr. Chairperson, Chair recognizes Dan. Thank you, Chair. This is what my blah, 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 right? If you're going to discuss or whatever. So there's that formality to it. You don't allow people to exchange and interact with each other and get in an argument. Everything's directed to the chair. And if I start talking in bad mouth, what was it again? Patrick, you can rat the gavel and say, all comments are directed to me. So it diffuses by the very nature that I'm not talking to Patrick, I'm talking to you. Now, if I'm irritated with my fellow, you often hear that language, my fellow, congressperson across the aisle or whatever, right? They don't use names. Typically they try to keep it at a higher level. And so you can create that expectation and write it out in your policy saying, this is how we conduct ourselves in our meetings. So when you get a new board member comes on board, you can give them an orientation. This, as a board, this is how we roll. We're going to treat each other with respect. Everything's going to be done through the board chair. You can observe us for a meeting and just see how this rolls, and you get a kind of a feel of the rhythm, right? So there's that expectation. You can't speak on an issue that's brought before this board until everyone on the board has had a chance to talk. And then we might do one more round. And we're going to limit board discussion to 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever you might want to set. So you're setting, not everyone's going to do this, but that is one way that you can manage that, because that is a problem. We do see on boards what we call public bullying, where, here's a classic. We had a board member that was conflicted. No, it was a council member, a city council. They had a conflict of interest, a legally determined conflict of interest. So they couldn't vote. But by golly, they sat there in that meeting and they railed upon their fellow council members for 20 minutes about the issue that they had a direct interest in, to ensure that they went the way he wanted to go, which I said, no, you should have kicked him out of the room or let him sit down and he's got a conflict. He shouldn't be speaking on the thing so he was bullying. He was bullying his fellow council members, and they acquiesced. And they gave in, and they postponed it. Because they didn't do it right, which gave them another bite at the apple. And so now they called and said, how do we figure this out? Because we didn't expect this to go the way it did. So here's the other thing. We got a few minutes. Here's the other thing that you'll find. We have these First Amendment auditors that go around, and we have people that are coming to meetings and they're saying, like, I have a constitutional right to speak, and say, yes, you do. However, this is what the courts, the Ninth Circuit Court has defined. When you're holding these meetings, it is a limited public forum, which is a legal determination. There's 4 different types of forums. And this one is a limited public forum, which allows you as the governing body to create expectations for how the public is going to behave. If you want to say no swearing in part of your public comment, you can hold people accountable to that. And that's not a violation of their First Amendment right, according to the Ninth District Court. Or Circuit Court. So as long as those expectations are reasonable, you can set those expectations. So you can say, we're going to give you a 3-minute time limit as public to make comment. And after that 3 minutes, then they need to yield the floor and make the comments directed to the chair. Keep on topic. So if what we find to be helpful, city council. Anyone city council? Have you ever been to the city council chambers down the street here? Yep. You walk in, just before you go through those, I think it's a double door. What's framed on the wall right there? It is the ground rules. I think I've got a picture of it on my phone. It's their set of ground rules. So have it posted in your meeting room. Here are our expectations for the public to participate. So what we find when that is in your policy, adopted in a policy, you have it on the wall, put it on the back of your agenda. Here is the expectation. So as the chair say, okay, now we're going to allow public comment. And if you look on the back of your agenda, you'll see our list of expectations for how you're going to participate in this process. Please keep your comments brief, within 3 minutes. Keep on topic. Keep it, civil, whatever else. And what you'll find when those expectations are defined, that they now know how to behave. And if they start acting inappropriately, what you'll find is the public will kind of rein them in. Hey, Patrick, agenda, or look at number 3, you're violating number 3, sit down, or, stop saying that or whatever. So the public will help aid you in that process. I see a lot of hands now. Oh my, let's go back here.
Again, not an attorney, but somebody who works in the next step is in addition to having those good ground rules, ensure that you are consistently enforcing them among all players. So even if you have some public person who is saying something that sounds really good and goes with the flow of where everything is, if your ground rule is 3 minutes, you shut them down at 3 minutes, so that you are equally applying the same rule across everybody across the board.
Really good point. Thank you. 5 minutes. Okay. My colleague just bought a thing from Amazon. It's an hourglass, but it's electronic. It's a big electronic hour, like huge, and it goes. So you can set it for 3 minutes, and it just glows like sand, but it's all electronic with lights, and it gets lower, lower, lower. So it's very clear. The thing I don't like about the hourglass is someone's done it in a minute. What do? Sit around for another 2 minutes while we wait for the sand to go down? So they've got the electronic, they just push the button and it resets, and they just keep risk. So it's a very visual thing for people to see, right? And so that everyone knows, it's like, oh yeah, your time is up, or I'm getting close, I got 5 minutes. Oh, yes. How do they use that? And so what happens if someone's done it in a minute? Then you're only getting 2 minutes then, sorry. Okay, now to your bad actor. So now here's another thing. This is new from the last legislative session. There's been a few boards, special district boards, that have been bad actors, that haven't been noticed in their meetings, have violated the bylaws, they've been violating the code of ethics, they've been just real pills. And it's been frustrating because no one, what do I do? Who do I go to? How do I hold them accountable? There wasn't a good framework. People would call us all the time complaining about, as a resident, and my board is either not meeting or meeting in secret, and what do? It's like, well, your option is go down to district court and sue them. That's right. Go tap into that judicial branch of government, and the judicial branch is the one that's going to look at the evidence. What did they do? What did you claim they did? You got to show your evidence. They've got to show. We're going to go to court and we're going to decide, were you violating the law or not? That's how we resolve these disputes. But who's got that time, energy, resources and is it really that important? Yeah, I feel like my constitutional rights are being violated, but I just don't. It's too much. It's too much. So, and I get it. So we worked with the interim committee on local government to work on how can we improve this. So they're creating a pathway. So now, if you look now at page 25, it's 206. It's highlighted because it's new, but at least 5% of the qualified electors that are served by that local government entity can file a petition with the county attorney. I was adamant on this. I just don't want them to make an accusation. But I want it to, you can make the accusation, fine, but it's going to go to the county attorney, who can then review it based on what you're saying and what does the law say, and say, yeah, that petition has merit. It has merit. Yes, I think there's something bad going on here. So in that case, this is how we got sucked into this. It goes to the county attorney, and if you look at the next section, that's B, it says, if the county attorney or prosecutor who conducts a review of the required subsection 1 determines the petition has merit, the local government entity shall participate in training provided by. So we've got to swoop in there. People love this. And we've got to provide the training on whatever the petition is. Now, we've gone nearly 2 years, and just this spring, we received, there was a petition, 12 petitions, 11 were to be found to have merit. So now we are coordinating with this fire district. Or it's a water district, it's the other problems. We are going to go provide training. They'll have to pay for the training. So here's the other thing I'm thinking. 11? We'll do a meeting for each one of the 11. Require them to be there, charge, and make it feel a little hurt on this. Now, the next part, this is part A. This is the carrot. So get the petition. 5, you got it. How many people are in your district? How many electors? 2,500. So 5% of 2,500. Who's good with math? Is it? So 175? 125? Yeah, there we go. 100. So is that a high bar for you to find 125 people to say, hey, these guys are screwing up and we need to do something about it? Maybe not. I don't, if there's 2,500, anyway, so that's the bar. The legislation that's going through the legislature now, the bill that's going through the legislature is Part B, and that's the stick. The carrot is we come in, it's low bar. If you're screwing up, we'll come in, we'll provide training, try to get you on track. Our assumption is that you're not conducting business appropriately because you just don't know. And we're going to fix that by yelling at you about all this stuff. And it's like, oh, now we know. Because we're just volunteers. We don't know. We just showed up. We're trying to do our best. We didn't realize there's all these rules. Fine, let's fix it. But if they continue to be a bad actor, then you can go, now they provide a pathway. You can go to the county commission and say that they're not following through still. I can't remember if it's through a petition or not, but they're still being bad actors. And then the county commissioners, through the county attorney, do a writ of mandamus, which says we're requiring you to follow the law. Now we've elevated. Now we're involving the courts on that. And if they don't, then they can be petitioned to be removed. So there hasn't been a pathway. What's happened before, you go to complain to the county commissioners, like, they're an elected body. Fire district's an elected body. We created them, but we don't have any responsibility overseeing them. We deal with the budget, but that's it. So it's easy for the county to step back and say, we have no dog in this fight. They come yelling at us. It's like, we're not enforcement, we're education. We can't go around saying you're not following the laws. Go to the courts, which is a high bar. So the legislature is trying to figure out a way to, how do we make it more accessible for the folks in the community to hold their elected officials or appointed officials accountable for their behavior without, so that there is some expectation, there is some bar there, but it's not so high that I've got to go hire an attorney, file a lawsuit with the court. Does that help?
For those who are online, the meeting is complete. You're free to go.